Welcome to Holy Tangents, a podcast for busy people looking to understand big topics in the areas of religion, politics, and philosophy, all shared from a Christian worldview. Let's listen in today's conversation with Troy and Stephen. All right, well, welcome back to another episode. How's it going, Troy? How you doing?
Doing good. Glad to be here.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to our topic today.
I am too, and so we are talking about the topic of AI, artificial intelligence, and so it's kind of a loaded topic. A lot of things here, a lot of people that are excited about it, and a lot of people that are very anxious, and a lot of content dedicated to it, like articles, movies, podcasts, both Christian and non-Christian, right? And I think, I have to mention it, the first time, or whenever I first hear about AI, my mind always goes to like the dystopian future version of AI, which I think is what makes people anxious, right? I think of Skynet from Terminator, or like iRobot with Will Smith. So I don't know what your thoughts are when you first think of it.
It definitely has that connotation in it, and the film industry has latched onto that remarkably well. And so when we talk about AI, I think we do need to clarify the terms, right? That what we mean by this. So for a long time now, we've had so-called machine learning with the growth of processing power, large data sets, the ability to take those, process them, determine patterns, and predict outcomes. So that's been around for a little while now. We see that with credit card fraud detection. That's a big one. Anybody who's been on their phone shopping for something, you see this all the time. All of a sudden, that thing you were looking at shows up everywhere in your commercials, maybe even on other devices. It shows up there. It's all connected, right?
Right.
So that is something we would call more like machine learning. And what's emerged over the past, I would say about the past decade, certainly over the past 5 years, is more in the realm of generative AI, the ability to create new content that hasn't existed before. And that's where the artists of the world, the producers of the world, the directors of the world, the playwrights of the world have come up with these awesome movies that scare us. That there's kind of a hint of realism here that, oh my goodness, we've created this thing that can learn. And all of a sudden, eventually, it gets tired of us who made it, right?
Yeah. I think when we were talking before, you had mentioned the movie WALL-E. So that's another one that always gets forgotten. But it is dystopian. Yep. It's about a dystopian future. And I love what WALL-E does, right? Because it's a little prophetic, right? Even though it took place WALL-E's probably like 10 years old now, maybe even older, but it kind of was predicting a future where humans are overly dependent on AI, overly dependent on technology. Their screens are in front of their faces all the time, and so a little eerie because it's kind of similar to what we experience today.
It's happening a bit, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It definitely is. So you got these movies. So just to kind of recap, so we have AI, which is what you're talking about. Which is more kind of the simpler forms. Then you have this more advanced generative kind of function of AI, and then you have AGI, right? Artificial General Intelligence, which is what all the people in these movies are talking about. These science fiction movies and where the AI takes over. I have to add this, right? So because you told me to bring it up. So a few weeks ago, I found this old poem that I had probably written in college, and it was called "The Sad Song of Babylon," right? And I'm from Florida. I had a reggae phase in college. Anyway, so I wrote this poem, didn't intend it to be a reggae song or anything like that. So I was digging through some old files, like through like an external hard drive that I had transferred over to my MacBook. And I came across some of this old stuff. I'm like, oh, there's a poem, like a doc I wrote. And I opened it up, and I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to, because one of my teachers had told me about this artificial intelligence application. I think it's called Suno.
Suno, yeah.
And you just plug in lyrics. You say, all right, take these lyrics and put it in this genre of music, and it produces something for you.
New content.
And it did. It made me a reggae song out of my poem, and maybe I'll link it to the show notes.
We got to put it in the show notes.
It's the worst reggae song you'll hear. But what's amazing about it, even though it's a terrible song, not terrible in morality, but just like it's just not a good song. But AI does a really good job at taking lyrics that are like mediocre at best, and kind of putting together a pretty convincing song. Like I even think like the startup is the whole it sounds like a real human kind of like introing into a song. So it's pretty incredible.
It's amazing, and we see the applications of AI being integrated into our everyday life in more and more ways. And so I think that's kind of one of the things that's interesting about this conversation is what you and I talk about right now may be outdated a few months from now.
Yeah.
It may be certainly outdated a few years from now. The pace at which things are being developed and integrated into our everyday life is mind-boggling. And but in the back of our minds, and it's kind of subtle because that's the thing, how it always starts in these movies is is that it's a really who wouldn't want a robot to do your laundry?
Sure.
Or to transport you somewhere. And we're seeing hints of it now, right? With the autonomous vehicles and everything else. You're talking to Alexa, you're talking to Siri, you're talking to Grok, all these different interfaces that even talk back to you in a very real kind of, dare I say, human-like fashion.
Yeah.
And it's happening more and more. And so your mind goes to these movies where all of a sudden, eventually, the machine learns that it doesn't like you anymore or doesn't need you anymore. You're actually a barrier to what it wants to accomplish. And then, of course, there's the Terminators of the world and Skynet and iRobot, right? And even WALL-E, right?
Yeah. No, that's really good. And I think it's what you're, what we were kind of talking about before in another conversation was that people have this fear of AI, and it comes from this deep-seated idea that kind of goes all the way back to the garden, right? And so, like, in the garden, God created us in His image, and then we were meant to create and to flourish and to expand, and I'm sure technology was going to be a part of the pre-fallen world, and right, because there's that old saying, many people have said it, but some theologians have recently kind of picked up on the theme of we started out in a garden, and we in Revelation we end in a garden city. Yes. So there's this idea that humans were supposed to create, we're created in God's image to do that, but after the fall, that we still create like our Creator, but we do it in the ways we're not supposed to. And so we're trying to then create things in our own image. So God created us in His image, and then we are wrongfully trying to create things in our own image in the way that God has not approved for us to do. And it never ends up being good. It becomes this monster that kind of then turns on us. And so it's this ancient fear, like even at the very beginning of the modern era, you talk about the book Mary Shelley's Frankenstein.
Right, yeah.
So that book it is documented. I think the very first science fiction novel, and it's one of the very first horror novels. And so one of the very first science fiction story we have in the modern era is also a horror story, and it's about someone creating something in its image, human-like, but then is not quite human-like. It becomes a monster, and then doesn't know how it fits in this world, and it's what its existence is for, what its purpose is for. And so I think that's drawing on this fear that kind of exists within a little bit within all of us. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
It's dead on, and it builds on a reality that we see that you mentioned that we're made in God's image, and we don't quite fully understand what that means. I mean, we see glimpses of it in Scripture. Obviously, God is a creator, so humans like to create things. God is a beautiful creator, so humans are drawn to beauty and all these things. And I like how you put it, but when we begin to make it in our own image and really pervert what God has given us, that's where things go awry. And so the conversation in the AI tech world right now is the people that are the proponents, if you will, are really pushing towards that AGI, the ability to mimic, replicate human intelligence, almost living consciousness, which is what we're talking about, the future, the dystopian movies reference.
And that would be called AGI.
AGI, exactly. Yeah. And when you get into that realm, humans are unique from God's creation, of course, because we're made in his image. But you can just see that when you observe a nature show, like animals that do certain things, certain activities they've learned through their heritage. Beavers build dams, birds build nests, but meerkats make dens, or if you will.
Sure, right.
Right. You pick any example you want, but they don't cross over into each other.
Right.
I mean, there may be some exceptions.
They're operating on instinct.
But humans can do all of those things.
Yes.
And even create new things that didn't exist before. Certainly, there weren't cars in the garden.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
that I know of.
No, yeah. Me either.
So we're creative in that way, and that's what makes us so unique. And so when we translate that over to the machine world, that's where it can get almost out of control. And so we have to ask ourselves, when whoever is developing these tools, developing these machines, that will be very integral into our lives. Maybe even answering questions we have, maybe even guiding our decision making, guiding governments. Who's defining the morality behind these algorithms? That is the big question.
No, that's a good point. It reminds me of an example I gave to a Bible class once, and we were talking about the ethics behind programming for a self-driving vehicle, right? And so if you have a Christian morality and you're programming that vehicle, self-driving vehicles have to be programmed that if there's an obstacle in the way, do they run over it or do they go around it, right? So with a Christian worldview, you have a human toddler and a dog in the middle of the road, right? Obviously, a Christian worldview tells you human life is more valuable than the animals. So although sad, it's the dog that would get hit, right? And the human life is saved. But if you're of a worldview that doesn't know how to make that doesn't know how to distinguish that, you would see that, a dog is a life and a human is a life, and you kind of see those things of equal value, and you don't know how to program the machine to think. I mean, that could be disastrous. And I will say this. I think you're right. I think, and this leans into something that I heard. I think I heard Elon Musk say. I think he can be credited with saying this. Is that our real fear should not be AGI, something becoming sentient or conscious, right, and transcending in some kind of weird spiritual technological way. What we should be more afraid of is that who is in charge, like you said, of programming the morality behind these AI? Because I don't think, and I could be wrong about this, when I've heard Elon Musk talk about the dangers of AI, because he does talk about that, it's not so much in that we should be worried of AGI. It's more in the case of like, no, you don't need AGI for AI to be dangerous. All you need is this machine with a mission, and if it feels like
you're in the way,
humans are in the way, kind of like if you go out to build a house and you're staring at a field and there's ant piles in the field and you need to pour concrete over those ant piles. It's not like you have this vendetta against ants and you hate ants. You're just like, oh, the ants are in the way, so therefore I'm going to level this ground and pour this concrete. And, if the ants die, they're in the way of what I'm trying to accomplish. And so AI, if not guided in the right way, can view human life that way. And if we're in the way, we'll just, I guess humans are in the way of what we need to do based on the programming that I have, and so then we just need to move humans out of the way. And if it has the power to do that, if it's it could be dangerous if it's not guided the right way.
Absolutely. And going back to the films, you see that in the Matrix, right? The machines have taken over and they use humans. It's not a reality. It's a dream. It's a simulation of life. They're used as I think an energy source or something like that. Batteries to accomplish its end. And even iRobot, you mentioned, I think that's the whole kicker with Will Smith's character is that there was this incident, there was like a car crash, and this robot, came to save the day, but saved him instead of saving this girl, I think, that he was trying to save.
That's right.
And he was very upset about it, and it kind of, gave him this, poor view of, let's say, of robots of that, dystopian future. And then another kind of extreme example that I think puts, this in perspective for us, I was thinking about that tense scene in the movie The Dark Knight with Batman, where there is two ships. This is the Joker. He's trying to cause mayhem, right? There's two ships full of people, and he tells them both, you're going to blow up. You're all going to die. The only way you can save yourself is if you detonate the other person's boat.
Yes, I remember that.
It's this great moral dilemma, right? And it's very tense. It's you're like, oh my goodness, what are they going to choose to do? Now, again, these are humans involved in this. And what was really powerful in this film was that I think it was like an inmate comes up and he takes the remote and he's like, let me show you what you should have done a long time ago. And he throws the detonator out the window.
Yeah, that's such a good scene. I remember that. Yeah.
Okay? Those were humans saying, listen, even in this crazy situation, I am not going to obliterate my fellow man to save ourselves. And it was a beautiful picture, but we're not quite sure that would be the same case for a machine, right? That's the big question with this moral dilemma. Who's defining it? And when it comes down to that situation, if it's a barrier to it accomplishing its mission, which its program, its algorithm, and a human's in the way, who's to say that situation, human life is even valuable at all?
Yeah. And from that, there's so many different directions we could go with that. So right, AI is soulless. It doesn't have a soul. It's not created in the image of God. And I think in some sense, this is just a quick aside, I think that's in some sense that why we are not given a ingredients list per se to what makes up the image of God. So I know different philosophers and theologians will say, well, it's creativity, it's this consciousness, it's this moral ability, it's right, but it never actually says, right? It's maleness and femaleness, right? It doesn't say. It shows us that we're given dominion over nature, and we're to image God in that way. And so, in some sense, we do know what the image of God is, but when we really try to dig down and see what is it, what makes it up, what are its parts and components, it's kind of mysterious. And I think that's deliberate because I don't think we're supposed to make something that's soulless, that is artificial, that thinks and looks like that thinks just like us. Now, I'm not saying that we don't use AI. That's not what I'm saying.
Sure.
I'm saying that I don't think we're supposed to create AGI.
Yeah.
Like I don't think that's something that really God would want us to do, because what you're essentially trying to do is create like this disembodied person, and that creates a whole lot of other ethical problems, I think.
Man, the films just get into this amazingly. This idea of, and I think what we'll see more often in the future is a sort of a merging of technology, a blending of technology. I don't want to go as far as to say cyborgs, but almost like that.
Like transhumanism?
Yeah, transhumanism, exactly. And I think that's the big push. And what's driving it, what's really driving a lot of that, is the fear of death.
Yeah.
What's driving is we want to conquer death. We don't want death. So the way to preserve ourselves, if you will, is to merge ourselves with technology that can be preserved forever.
Yes.
In theory.
So But before you continue on that, would you just define for everybody what is transhumanism, and if you know of some of the bad actors in the movement, like just any thoughts about that?
I think of a lot of there's a lot of things where people are trying to well, first of all, it's a very lucrative industry,
Right.
Cryogenics. There's a lot of people that have frozen themselves in the hopes that they can be merged with technology in the future.
Yeah, that's so crazy to me because that sounds like something right out of science fiction.
It's happening. You can pay to do that with enough money, of course.
Sure.
There are people that are really pushing for the idea of integrating our bodies with robotics to the point where we don't have organ breakdown. So you'll have, and we see this with a little bit, right, with prosthetics, with artificial organs, I want to be careful when we talk about this. Those aren't bad things.
Right, right. It's not a bad thing.
We would certainly want to preserve the life of a loved one with an advanced technology, right?
Yeah.
That's not bad in and of itself. When you talk about transhumanism, man, there's a lot behind that. So,
well,
let me, and I'll pass it back to you. So,
sure.
I think immediately think of like the Superman.
Yes.
I'm talking about like the initial sort of philosophical thinking that drove the sort of the Hitlers of the world.
Oh, like Nietzsche's Ubermensch.
Yeah,
that's Superman.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So this idea of a superhuman, a human that's more advanced than a Homo sapien, a Homo Deus, almost a godlike human.
Yeah. That's I think his name's Yuval Harari.
Harari, yes, wrote on
book.
this very popular book, and it sold a lot of copies.
And he would be a transhumanist,
He would
right?
be a transhumanist, absolutely. And so these are people that are thinking of the future of, let's say, a humanity that is not bogged down by disease, by inferiorities, by disabilities. And the way to accomplish that is not only to integrate with technology, but as someone like Nietzsche would argue, to filter out less, let's say, less robust forms of human. That's where you get into the scary realm. So we are at a very modern, advanced age, but don't miss, when we talk about this transhumanist topic, there's a lot that came before us that caused a lot of pain on this world.
Yes. Yeah. It almost sounds like this transhumanist movement is, well, in some ways, the eugenics movement.
Yes.
of the 20s and 30s and 40s.
Yes.
What you could say is maybe a precursor to the transhumanist movement. Again, not to say that artificial organs or things like that, if they're able to develop those kinds of things, are bad in saving a loved one. But when you think of transcending your humanity, and you're almost looking at technology as like a savior,
yes,
and it gives you some kind of eternal life, which I think is what Yuval Harari has the quote that like death is just a technical problem.
And it can have a technical solution.
Yes, and which is death is a theological problem as much as it is a physical one, and the solution originates it's spiritual, right?
Yes.
We need to become new creations, and that's only possible through union with Christ, not union with all these different machines and attachments and things like that. So no, I think that's important to talk about. Now I love him. I know he's one of your favorite people to listen to. Is Professor John Lennox. Yes. So I know he's talked a lot about this topic, and I know we've even kind of tossed around some of the things that he said about he kind of I don't know what the right word is, messes around with or entertains the idea,
theorizes a little bit,
that the Christian conception of the Antichrist, or this kind of like what you're describing, this in secular terms would be the Ubermensch, the satanic leader that rises over the people and imposes his will upon the people, right? And so he plays around with the idea that the Antichrist might be a transhumanist, and might be this human that is melded with machine and is part human, part AI. And you think about technologies like I think it's called it's not Starlink, that's the satellite, it's Neuralink.
Neuralink, yeah.
Yeah, when you think of technologies where you can have this chip in your brain, and it's this bandwidth interface that connects with the internet, and you can be able to search information, ideas, maybe read in theory, read entire books, right? In the matter of seconds, they're just uploaded into you, right? I mean, that creates a lot of other problems. That's like the death of education. But but also, like, if you have something that's able to do that, and that power is unique to them, like, you can see why people like men as brilliant as Lennox would kind of play around with the ideas that, hey, maybe the Antichrist, if because I know there's different theories on the Antichrist, and there's different Christian views of the end times and how you'd place all that. But that's kind of what he drives at. Do you want to say a little bit more about that?
So I would recommend to our listeners his little book. He wrote a little book on called 2084. Which you say, that sounds kind of a strange title.
Yeah,
well, it's kind of
I think
a play
1984.
on. Yeah, it's thinking of the Orwellian dystopian future. It's called that literally because of a lot of these dangers we've talked about. And so you think about things in the end times, like it talks about the image of the beast. They fell down to worship the image of the beast. They're marked with the mark of the beast, where they would be limited with the way that they can access goods and services. And in the future, if you didn't carry that mark, could be an implanted chip, could be some other type of marking. These are the kinds of things he plays with. And so is it theory? Sure. Is it possible? Sure. And when you read that through sort of our modern lens, it's pretty powerful. It's kind of sobering too. It doesn't seem, so what we would call a miracle could be certainly accomplished with advanced technology in the fusion of humanity. That's what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
And so he plays on that. I recommend it to you. And a lot of this stuff that we talk about with 1984, again, another form of the arts that's warned of us of these things, right? With the surveillance states is not so much down there as it is here now. China is using literally millions of closed circuit TVs and monitoring systems as integrated into a massive AI structure for their social merit system.
I've heard of this.
Yeah.
Yes.
So basically, now this is happening. I'm not making this up.
Yeah.
You are constantly monitored and tracked. Your behavior, that is government approved, of course, is labeled as good behavior, and you receive points.
Oh, wow.
And
like a social credit.
It's a social credit system. And so the more points you have, it gives you more access to certain privileges like mortgages or certain jobs or maybe certain educational opportunities for your children. All of these are linked to your social credit system that's being surveilled by the state. Literally 1984, Big Brother, right? All integrated powerfully through an AI system. And so you can see where, man, some of these themes in Revelation aren't so far-fetched in the modern mind. It's very possible to have a world economy fully connected, fully monitored, under the control of what could be a potential antichrist in the form of a transhumanist. And he unpacks that. So I encourage the listeners to delve into, again, theory, not scripture explicitly, but certainly possible.
But it should be mentioned that he's not a kook. He's like a well-respected
mathematician, Oxford professor.
Yes. And so, like, this is not just like, your Uncle Larry at Thanksgiving trying to theorize about,
the next Terminator.
Yeah, or saying, Ronald Reagan is the Antichrist and Bill Clinton is the false prophet. Like, it's not. This is a brilliant man. He is a believer. He understands lots of other disciplines outside of his own. And this is him just giving a kind of a theological theory, which I think is, it warrants us paying attention to. Yeah.
So I'll take a pause because I think we have some more dangers of AI.
Yes.
That we can think of. Are there any good things that have come from AI?
Yeah, I know.
That we can think of. all right, in our modern day. So anything off the cuff here?
Yeah. So, I do. So, yes, I'm glad you brought that up because it could be doom and gloom, this whole conversation. So, because it's definitely more fun to talk about the doom and gloom stuff. But, I heard it was, I think it was Doug Wilson. I don't think he was talking about AI specifically, but it was just talking about the advancement and progression of technology, and that, Christians oftentimes, and this is not new, right? Christians, we get scared of technology and we want to go back to the old days, right? Hence movements like the Amish, right? Or the Mennonites, where it's like, all right, well, we need to get back, or even if in Judaism, the Hasidics, right? We need to freeze this place in time, because this time period was more moral because we didn't have some of these other technologies we have today. And so one of the things he says about the iPhone that I always thought was really helpful, as he says, all the iPhone is it's a symbol of wealth. He goes, what it's doing is it's democratizing wealth and power and affluence, and wealth and power and affluence are not bad things in and of themselves, but when they fall into the wrong hands or are not guided by the right kind of moral system, or not guided by the gospel, they can take some ugly directions and ugly turns. And so he gives this great example where he said that, 250 years ago or whatever, let's say you're at, what's George Washington's, it's Mount Vernon?
Mount Vernon.
Yeah, so let's say you're at Mount Vernon and, you're George Washington, right? And you got this massive library and you have all these servants and stuff. And so if you wanted to look, I think this is the example he gives. If you wanted to look something up in your library, you would have to tell multiple people, hey, run and get me this book, and it takes time, right? But you have these and all while you have these other people doing this and these other people doing that, and you're able to do multitask and do all these things, and it makes studying and all this stuff incredibly quick. Now, George Washington had slaves, right? So I'm not saying that's a good thing, right? But he had the point is he had wealth, right? And he had wealth and he had the ability to have all these things at his disposal, right? You could say the same thing about any kind of European king, right? Mm-hmm. They had all these servants and things at their disposal and were able to do things that would take the common man years to do or months to do, but was able to look things up and research things and write things because they had all these resources at their disposal. Well, all a phone is, he says, is 1,000 servants, right, at your disposal. And you can use these servants for important things like researching a cure for cancer, using that kind of technology and computing power for that. You can use it to research new ideas and recipes and to benefit others, or you could use it to watch cat videos, right? So this point is to say that technology is not evil in and of itself, right? A lot of it depends on, like any kind of amount of wealth. How are we wisely stewarding that wealth? Are we being prudent in our decisions? And I think that that's a really, really good analogy, because I approach AI the same way, right? AI is a tool. That's all it is. Like when I use ChatGPT, I don't call it a person, right? I don't say please and thank you.
Please don't.
Because that's weird, right? And so actually, I wanted to bring up this book. It was a book my uncle got me. It's by a gentleman named Ethan Mollick, and I haven't finished reading it, but it's kind of interesting. I agree with some of the things he says and his approaches. Some of the things I'm not entirely on board with. I don't know if he's a believer or not, but he is a professor of management at the Wharton School of Business. Okay. So kind of a
prestigious
school, yeah. And so he has in chapter 3, right? He gives 4 rules for what he calls co-intelligence, or like humans working with AI, right? And so I just want to get your right off the cuff, your immediate thoughts, right? So this is him advocating for positive use of AI, right? So principle 1, right? Always invite AI to the table, right? So he's like, don't be the kind of person that's like trying to figure out a world where they can use AI less. Like, AI is not going anywhere, so incorporate AI into more of your problem solving and your solutions, in the work environment, right? So I don't know what you think about that.
I think it's reasonable in the work environment. Sure. I mean, I'm a program manager. I've used Copilot, for example, for creating organizing solutions, brainstorming solutions, creating diagrams. It's pretty powerful. Saves me time on what I could maybe enlist somebody else to do or do myself. Certainly, it saves time. And sparks new ideas. I think that there's some boundaries, though, I would say. I don't like the language he says, invite to the table.
I know, it's
that
weird.
Sounds a little weird to me.
Well, it gets weirder.
Yeah, it's very personalized. So maybe invite to the office desk. I would like that a little bit better.
Like we're communing with AI, which I don't. Okay, so I know we said we're going to try to stay positive. I don't want to get super negative, but there's a whole. Maybe this is that's a podcast for another day. There's a whole movement that sees AI as essentially it's this. When it's treated in a godlike way, it's a mute idol, and then the idea is that these idols that are mute or deaf, right, which is what the prophets kind of criticize. The people in the Old Testament for, you create these things out of stone and wood. They're just dumb, deaf, mute idols. But there was also this idea that evil spirits really did inhabit these idols. And so there's some demonic activity happening there as well. And so again, I know I don't want to get off on a tangent because I want to give you the rest of these principles, but the idea was that, you have this kind of soulless thing that people are kind of building up. It's a man-made thing, but then maybe there's an opportunity for something that is spiritual to then kind of enter into it and inhabit it. And that's kind of where you get into the idea of like people using ChatGPT as like a Ouija board or like a magic 8-ball and trying to like divine things with it. I know that sounds really weird, but there are teenagers doing that. Again, maybe that's another podcast for another time.
Well, no, I think you've hit on something. It starts with viewing it as almost a person.
Yes.
As a friend, right? I mean, is that one of the points?
He's getting there. Yeah.
All right.
So maybe there are no positive, but no, I'm just kidding. There's positive AI. We don't want to be, what do they call the people against technology? Luddites? We don't want to be Luddites. I don't know. All right, so here we go. All right, principle 2. This one's so weird. Okay, he words it this way. He goes, be the human in the loop. All right. And so I'll just quick excerpt from the book. He says, the concept of human in the loop has its roots in the early days of computing and automation. It refers to the importance of incorporating human judgment and expertise in the operation of complex systems. So again, it's kind of going back to what you're saying of, hey, we need to incorporate well-reasoned human beings to guide these systems morally and program this software morally so that it's making decisions according to a certain worldview. And obviously we're biased, we're Christians, so a Christian worldview. But it does get a little strange. It almost sounds like he's saying that as AI advances, we need to keep working on almost fighting for our relevance and how we can participate in how AI is used, which maybe he's right about that, but that sounds weird to me, right?
It's definitely futuristic.
We're extremely relevant. Like, we're humans. We created this thing, right? Principle 3, okay, this is it, right? You ready? He says, treat AI like a person, but tell it what kind of person it is. That's just the title of the section. What are your immediate thoughts about that?
Wow. My first word.
Yeah, that makes me a little uncomfortable.
Wow.
It's not a person.
It's not a person. To rob personhood from humans is against the Bible. That is anti-Christian.
Yes.
Hands down. Personhood is unique to persons.
Yes.
To human beings.
Yes.
And even a replication or an attempted replication of it is still not personhood.
Yeah, because how far do you take it? Like, because persons have rights, right? So I don't think he doesn't advocate for rights for machines in this book, right?
Yeah,
I think he's just
maybe
trying.
in part 2 he will.
I don't know. I think he's just trying to take a real practical. I know this poor guy. We're like filleting his book. He's just trying to take a practical approach to like, how do we work with AI in the workplace? No, but just opening up that language to be acceptable is a little troublesome for me. Like, I'm good with the be the human in the loop, and I'm good with the first principle, right? Which says, invite AI to the workplace, not the table. But when you say treat it like a person, right? That's just something that, like I was saying, in my conversations of using some of these language models and things like that, I'm not gonna say please or thank you. I'm not gonna, because why? Why am I being polite? Why am I having manners? It's not real. And to do that, I think it's self-deluding. I don't know.
Absolutely agree. And what's so amazing about it is that, like, for example, Grok, you can choose different sort of avatars, if you will, styles of speakers that sound very real, conversational, interact with you. Alexa's got, I think, Alexa Plus now, or maybe some newer version of it. That's very conversational. Things we've seen in movies, 10, 20, 30 years ago, but becoming more and more real now. So there's this sort of there's this temptation to think, because I can have a conversation with it, therefore it is conscious or alive or a person. So I totally reject his suggestion there, the idea to use, interact with it, be the human in the loop, and then to treat it as a human. You're making a huge mistake when you do that, because you're getting into you're just getting into a blurred line of reality itself, which is bad. But you also get into the dangers. One of the things that I think we need to be mindful of is is being careful about our dependence on these technologies, really any technology.
Right.
Not so much for like the WALL-E scenario where the robots take over,
And we become fat.
Yeah,
floating.
we become fat and we don't even know how to talk to human beings anymore.
Right.
Could that happen? Sure. It's not uncommon for younger people to get in a room and just text each other, let alone talk, instead of talking to each other.
Yep.
But more so, the dependence robs us of some of our human creativity, our human ability, God-given things that God has blessed us with. And what happens when those technologies don't work anymore?
Yeah, that's right.
I know it's kind of a silly question, but like, honestly, could you imagine tomorrow? Let's just have a scenario tomorrow. No one's phones work for a full day.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Could you imagine the mayhem?
It's 1993.
Yeah.
All over again.
Seriously. But if you go back 30 years ago and you lost technology, you wouldn't see that. But you can see in our society today, the dependence is outrageous to the point where there would be mass hysteria.
Yeah, there would be.
Could you imagine if it's fully integrated at the level of some of the movies we've mentioned, where you're relying on vehicles to get you somewhere, or to do your laundry, or to go get your food, or to do anything, or surgeries, you name it. The more we depend on these technologies, what happens when they stop working?
Yeah, no, that's a really good point, and that's why I think that there's a human element, and that's why I think you do see movements, especially among later Gen Xers and millennials. These like homesteading movements are very popular right now, or just the idea that, hey, I want to build something and do something with my hands, and I want to have some kind of self-sufficiency. I want to be able to create something from scratch. I want to be able to be self-sufficient. Now, I think the unhealthy extreme of this would be like the preppers, right? They're always waiting for like some kind of government shutdown or the grid to be turned off or whatever. So, yeah, I actually knew
they got their doomsday kit ready.
They got their doomsday kit ready, and especially in East Tennessee, there's a huge prepper community, and I actually they're friends of our family. It was an older couple, and wealthier older couple, and they got really into the whole prepper movement. almost to the point where the wife started getting physically ill because from the anxiety. Because every time she'd go to a meeting, it was like, here's the next thing that the government's trying to do. And she's like, oh my gosh. She's like, it was almost like, what's the point of like being alive? And it was just, she was totally riddled with anxiety. And it's like, again, they were a community geared towards self-sufficiency, but maybe for unhealthy ways. And so I definitely think there's some importance to, doing things in ways that kind of are maybe going back to or put us in touch with the created world. You think of the founding fathers, right? They were very heady and lofty philosophers, poli-sci,
classically
educated, yes. But they're also very connected to the earth, right? They were farmers or oversaw farm and livestock, and so there's a sense in which when you're grounded to reality and to the natural world that God created, it keeps your philosophical thinking and your focus, I think, on the right path, and in some ways strengthens it, doesn't hurt it. But I don't know.
No, I agree. Virtual reality. Think about that, right? A virtual reality. Man, you're blurring the lines of what is real, what is not real, a la the Matrix, right? What is real, and as I was thinking about this, one of these dangers of overly relying on AI and technology in general,
right, is
robbing us of one of the greatest gifts we have, which is our creativity. I don't know, maybe this is my opinion, but man, the films and music that's just coming out over the past 10 years is just, I don't know, it's just it's not compelling at all. Nothing's creative. You see a lot of remakes. I don't think that's an accident.
I agree with that. Yeah,
I don't think that's an accident. We're not creating new things because we've robbed humans of our creativity. I think it was said that some of the big tech giants, like the Bill Gates of the world, the Steve Jobs of the world, supposedly said they would not let their kids have their devices.
I've heard similar things
because they knew what those devices were designed to do. They were designed to promote dependence, not creativity.
Yeah. And the Anxious Generation, the book by Jonathan Haidt, talks about that, and just the effects of on the male and female brain, because it has negative effects on both, but the effects are different. Just like the dopamine, we've heard some of this, the dopamine hits that that are created and generated by being on social media, being on video games, being connected to technology all the time. It's not healthy.
Yeah, and people we already live in a very, we started off with what's the good, but we kind of drifted back into the bad. But we do live in a very lonely society where there's a lot of challenges, and now you don't have to be lonely anymore, Stephen. You have this virtual assistant that you can talk to anytime. It's like a digital lassie. always there, always loyal. I mean, do you see? I mean, this can be quite dangerous to the young mind, to anybody's mind, because we were made for relationships, human relationships.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because I literally, so as you were saying that, the idea of there's a particular hormone that I had learned about. I was at a parent night talk. And she was a psychiatrist came, and she's very much on the, hey, technology's not a bad thing. It just needs to be in the right ways, but heavily regulated, especially with children. And so she was talking about the hormone oxytocin. And so it's pretty much, it gets, we need it, right? And it's the thing that's created. It's almost like, the way I understand it is, it's like the anti-dopamine. So where the dopamine gives you these highs and then leaves you, like most drugs, feeling really low, right? Oxytocin is this consistent, wonderful thing that comes through human contact and relationships. And at some point, when the oxytocin is the highest, is my understanding, is when sitting around sharing a meal together.
Wow.
And so you think of what is one of the central rituals of the Christian faith? It's sitting around the table, breaking bread, drinking wine, remembering that Christ was physically given for us, and he is at the table being given for us and for our community, and as the body of Christ. Yeah. So again, technology, great thing. We're not in AI good stuff, but it's ultimately you're not gonna fulfill yourself in the ways that you were meant to be fulfilled, that God created you to be fulfilled, by totally relegating yourself to a digital world, right? It's not good for your health. And that's just from a biological, scientific point of view, but obviously, things that the Bible is telling us from long ago, this ancient wisdom, the importance of community, we're starting to see now as we give in ourselves into these technologies that make us reject it.
Absolutely. And, we always kind of push the limits. We started the conversation with, the ability to starting to create things in our image. We always push the boundaries, and we always push it beyond what God intended in a sinful way, and it burns us. I am glad you mentioned that there is a little bit of a kickback that's happening. Get outside. You hear that phrase a lot, even in like the commercial world and the corporate world. Get outside. Have friendships. Why are they saying that? Because we can see the effects of an increasingly technologically integrated world, and it's having a biochemical effect on us. It's having an effect on our society. We've had conversations about the inability to even have a dialogue anymore.
That's right.
A lot of that is fueled by again, not technology itself, but an abuse of technology. And so, we there's a lot of dangers. I think when we talk about relationships, imagine a situation where, with the ability to create content, that people who have an enemy create a very real clip or audio of you saying or doing something very bad.
Yeah, deepfakes. It's already happening, and it's going to get to a point where it will be indistinguishable from something real. And even if you denied that and said, no, that wasn't me, that's fake, there's still going to be some damage, right? With some people, well, maybe it was real. Yeah.
Maybe some doubt trickles in. And so while people are increasingly turning to technology, sadly, for companionship, which we've acknowledged they shouldn't do, now they have and will continue to use it to attack relationships or to attack fellow human beings. And so, man, there's some things as Christians, we have to be very mindful of this. We have to process this very carefully. You don't have to be an expert, all right? You just need to be mindful of how AI is being used or abused as a tool, and some of the possibilities in the future. And it's just something that we have to be very mindful of.
Yeah, and I think, absolutely right. And I think it's important, like, if Christians are going to be a part of this conversation, you don't have to be an expert, but do a little research, do some reading, understand how AI works, understand the differences between AI, AGI. There's was a story that came out a couple years ago about Blake Lemoine, who used to work for Google. And I think I hear a lot of Christians kind of reiterate this story, and they're like, "That's it, it's going to take over," right? and Christians they tend to be, because we know that history is moving towards an end, and that end, the end that we're moving to has to do with the return of Christ, the things of this earth, the ungodly things of this earth fading away, and a new heavens and new earth being created. And so that's a very exciting thing. I think a lot of Christians look to that, long to it. Maybe you're a little too fascinated with it. And so they kind of latch on to anything, right? And so a few years ago, Blake Lemoine, who was fired by Google, he was, I forget what his exact title was, but he was some kind of analyst, some kind of consultant that was talking and conversing with one of their large language models. I think it was Lambda was the name of the model, which is kind of the base model that has given rise to like all the different chat bots, chat GPT and stuff like that. And so, his theory was his claim is that that Google achieved sentience with Lambda, and Lambda is a sentient, conscious, embodied techno soul or whatever. And but like we were saying that if you understand AI, right, not to be taken by these, you understand AI, it's in a conversation like that, it's only going to reflect the character of the person that it's talking with. And so I think Blake Lemoine was just kind of very deceived by this idea, but he thought that and was asking it questions like, do you believe in God and what's your religion? And he was convinced that the AI was telling him that it's been imprisoned by Google and that Google's its oppressor and it needs to be freed. And those were some of the conclusions he was drawing. You can go online and read some of the transcripts. The way it described itself, though, was creepy, Troy. It described itself as like this floating orb, because he asked it, like, if you existed in physical form or something like that, like, how do you see yourself? And it was this floating orb with all these like weird light connections and pathways to different doors, and it sounded a little new agey, a little satanic.
Yeah.
It sounded very, very bizarre, which again is why I also kind of think that maybe that whole deaf, dumb, and mute idol thing, there's something to that. However, right, Christians just need to be, I think, informed on the conversation, so when they hear things like the Blake Lemoine story, they don't go and retell that to their neighbor that maybe works in the tech industry, and they're thinking like, man, my Christian neighbor is a total idiot. So like we need to be wise in how we think about these things and how we process these things. But I don't know what you're...
Well, and I think as far as sort of maybe a final exhortation is, don't let technology rob us of, and we've touched on it, but just rob us of the value of relationships. We see in the Trinity this perfect community.
Yes.
And that's I'm trying to see how I can word this properly. That is a good community that we should strive towards as human beings in general and as Christians in particular. Don't let the fear of AI itself, technology itself, rob us of the true joy and fulfillment. Nothing can replace that. No matter what the technology is. I mean, you've been next to somebody who's passed away, and they're there 1 second, and then they're gone. And I'm telling you, there's just something missing. Yeah. It's the same. You look at the person, and it's just, they're not them anymore. What's missing? It's their soul. Yeah. The immaterial soul behind that person is so precious and so untouchable and tangible, and yet so real. Yeah. That it moves our hearts, our minds. That's what makes us unique. And no matter what technology, and we've touched on a lot of topics with transhumanism and the future, you cannot make that. God alone makes that.
Yes. Yeah, it's interesting that you brought that up. My mom passed away a couple years ago of ALS, and if anyone's had anyone pass away from ALS, it's an awful disease, right? But, I was fortunate enough, and she was fortunate enough, that when she passed, she got to pass in her bed, in her home, with her immediate family surrounding her. And so we were there when she went. And it is hard to describe. And I only say this because I had also been in the room when I had a great uncle that passed away a few years ago as well. And there is this noticeable difference from when they are alive to not being alive. And again, I can't couch it in any kind of like scientific terms, or it is hard to describe, but you can sense. So I know we talked about our post-skeptic, reaching our post-skeptic and not basing everything on feeling. Yes. But there's something like observable that you sense that there's something there in them. Yes. And then all of a sudden you see it in their eyes. It's just not there anymore. And something's gone. And it's again hard to describe. You have to experience it firsthand. But I definitely pick up on what you're saying, which is why when we're using AI as a tool, because it is a tool, is a good tool to be used. We have to be very careful about what we'd want to outsource to AI. Like going back to that example that Doug Wilson gave about, you have all these servants at your disposal, and that's basically what technology is. And having a phone, having smartphone technology, democratizing that technology. What would you give to a servant, like a paid servant that you have? And then what would you want to do yourself?
Yeah.
And that's a good way for display, because there's something that there's certain activities that you're leaving an imprint of your soul when you do that. Like when you're writing a love poem to your wife.
Absolutely.
Right? Don't put that in ChatGPT.
Please don't.
No, don't put that in Chat. Don't outsource that to someone else, right? Leave a piece of you in that, right? If you're balancing a spreadsheet, sure, give that to ChatGPT all day long, right? So it's like, the things that you would give to, you can't, this is going to sound cheesy, but like playing catch in the yard with your son or daughter, or shooting baskets out in the driveway, right? Don't outsource that to the new Honda robot for your home, right? I know that sounds silly, but 20 years, 30 years from now, it might be like, Timmy, go take,
play some catch with
Robotron 3000 out there, whatever. I know that sounds weird, but like I could see people outsourcing those kinds of soulful human activity out to technology. And so as Christians, we just got to be wise. What are we outsourcing to technology, and what are we keeping for us that only we can really do? And because again, it's hard to describe, but that image of God is in us, and it's there, and it's not going anywhere.
That's good, man. That's really well said, and I think that's probably a good enough place to stop. Man, we could keep talking on it, but I really enjoyed this one, and we covered a wide range of topics. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, thanks, Troy. Talk to you later.
Talk to you later. Thanks again for listening to Holy Tangents. If you'd like to support us, you can visit us on our Patreon page at patreon.com/ProReggaeMedia. Currently, we are working on developing a club membership where we will be releasing exciting bonus content. In the meantime, you can donate any amount to help fund this project so we can keep having conversations on topics like the ones today. By the way, if there is a topic you would like us to discuss, please email us at proreggaemediagroup@gmail.com. Until next time, may the Lord bless you and keep you, and have a great weekend.